Anime video games are in a precarious position right now. 3D arena fighters are essentially the anime equivalent of the hero shooter genre, and there's been a growing fatigue over the past few years, with every series trying to jump on the bandwagon.
Men have always run things, and there have never been any problems whatsoever. And don't say the economy, or Iraq, or income inequality, or racism, or Brett Kavanaugh, or air pollution, or Vietnam, or slavery, or Watergate, or capitalism, or Me Too, or homelessness, or police brutality, or homophobia, or Monica Lewinsky, or school shootings, or Native American genocide, or Fox News, or Tim Allen, or climate change.
Even long-standing series like Bleach, Naruto and Dragon Ball are struggling, with games either being broken on PC at launch, feeling like a glorified DLC for the last game, or being abandoned after launch outside of a shallow season pass. And now there's another game set to join this ever-growing catalogue in the coming months, My Hero Academia: All's Justice. The trailers that I've seen look pretty good. The game looks like it has a huge roster, and the gameplay suggests that King has really stepped up their game. With that in mind, I thought it might be interesting to look at the first game, My Hero: One's Justice, to see where the series started and how far it's come since then. With One's Justice being a 3D arena fighter, it has mechanics similar to other games in the same genre. The combat is based on a combination of regular attacks, super moves, and a rock-paper-scissors-like system of charged attacks, attacks that give super armor, and unblockable attacks. The roster pulls from both the heroes and villains of the story, each with movesets that reference their fights from the series. For example, there's this detail that All Might's ultimate gives you a combo of 300, referencing his fight with the USJ Nomu in Season 1. I just wish that they'd waited for the movie. That way they could include his iconic lat spread. The game adds a vertical aspect to combat with the addition of wall combat and making the stages quite tall. Characters can be trapped in the walls if they're launched by a strong attack, opening them up to take more damage for a short time. However, in my experience, the stages feel quite cramped width-wise. The character movement here feels really floaty and sluggish. Closing the gap between you and your opponent feels awkward even when you use the dash. So when you're fighting against agile characters like Ida and Gran Torino, your movement feels even slower by comparison. The character roster also feels quite unbalanced, with ranged attacks being easy to spam and keeping you at a distance. Playing against characters like Todoroki, Darby and All for One feels like a loop of being launched, closing the distance, and then just being launched again. And speaking of the roster, it consists of 20 characters split unevenly between 14 heroes and 6 villains. Despite the bias towards heroes, a large portion of Class 1A is missing. Characters like Mina, Ojiro and Sora are nowhere to be seen. There are also 3 DLC characters available for the game: Shoot Style Deku, Endeavor, and the Wind Guy from the licensing exam. We didn't get characters like Kurogiri, Mount Lady or 13, but we do get a second Deku. Thankfully, All's Justice does seem to be remedying this issue, because One's Justice feels really limited in what you can do and the number of character matchups you can make. The game's story mode covers the events from Midoriya interning with Gran Torino and the confrontation with Stain, to All Might's last stand against All for One. Well, I guess it's technically his first last stand against All for One.
That's why I gotta show my face.
Jarvis, scan this guy's balls.
It uses anime screenshots, character PNGs, and the odd in-engine cutscene to tell the story of My Hero Academia. This is a terrible way to present the story in my opinion. Using anime screenshots to retell the story just feels cheap and low effort. If I wanted to see this, I just watch the actual anime or read a physical book of anime screenshots. But those don't exist. And unfortunately, the game doesn't have an English dub. This isn't the end of the world, but it's nice to have as an option. When I played through One's Justice for the first time a few years ago, one of my main complaints was how short the story was. It covers roughly 48 chapters worth of the manga's story. But now that I think about it, the start of My Hero Academia's story doesn't work well as a video game, since Midoriya cripples himself every time he uses his quirk. Up until the sports festival, you'd just be playing the anime version of Skate 3's Hall of Meat. Realistically, they covered as much of the anime as they could have at the time of release, since the episode of All Might's Last Stand premiered in June 2018. They couldn't go any further without spoiling the series for anime-only fans, or delaying development until more of the series was animated. With One's Justice being announced in the first Weekly Shonen Jump issue of 2018, the story mode ending with an episode that released in June 2018, and the full release of the game being in August 2018, it's likely that this game's development was pretty rushed. But One's Justice doesn't just follow the story one for one, as there are also side stories and what-if battles to complete along the way. But these are kind of pointless because they tend to just be a singular fight that arises from a very mundane situation that would probably constitute a filler episode in the actual anime. The synopsis of one of these what-ifs is just, this is a fight that might have taken place one day. Jesus Christ, I'm not expecting what if All Might was betrayed and trapped in the hyperbolic time chamber for 1000 years, but give me something at least halfway interesting. In an attempt to compensate for the short story mode, you unlock the villain story mode after beating One for All. And this is literally just the exact same chain of events, but you play as the villains instead. That's it. And once you complete the villain story mode, you unlock some fights from the UA Sports Festival. And no, it's not worth it. This story mode just fails to deliver on what you'd expect. It doesn't pay homage to the series in any meaningful way, with its reliance on anime screenshots and static PNGs. After finishing the Stain fight, the game plays an in-game cutscene of his defeat, and it looks fine enough. So you'd assume that other big moments get the same treatment. There are some other cutscenes like Bakugo's rescue and All Might's United States of Smash, but then the others are just Midoriya explaining All Might's retirement over a blank screen, followed by Midoriya wiping his eyes, and a PNG of All for One while he monologues, followed by a shot of Shigaraki.
That's it?
There are other big moments that I think are worthy of being animated in the few arcs that the game does cover, like Midoriya defeating Muscular, Bakugo's kidnapping, and Midoriya fighting Todoroki at the Sports Festival. But no, you'll get a watered down version of the United States of Smash, and you're gonna be happy about it. So the story mode is kinda buns, and the roster falls flat, but what else is there to do in One's Justice? The other game modes are what you'd expect from your average fighting game, like practice and online and offline versus matches. And other than the gallery where you can view character models and the 7 cutscenes, One's Justice also has a mission and arcade mode. Mission mode has you choose a team of 3 characters and you make your way through a map. Each map is filled with fights and they all have different conditions to make them more difficult, like the opponent's normal attacks doing more damage or their health regenerating over time. They also added this weird RPG-esque element where your characters can level up and you can use items on them to increase their stats and heal them between fights. This just feels like they were scrambling for another game mode, so they decided to take the game board map thing from the peak that is Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2. And arcade mode is just mission mode, but worse, with you picking a character and doing 6 fights back to back. And each fight ends with unique character dialogue between both sides, and it is the most generic thing you will ever read. If you want the character roster to feel slightly more varied, you can customize the characters that we do get with new outfits, accessories, and intro lines. These cosmetics are unlocked by using characters several times, playing through mission mode, and by completing special objectives within story missions. These range from just defeating the enemy, to finishing with a certain level of HP, or finishing your opponent with a specific move. And the costumes are just... So every costume change is just a palette swap. You have an All Might colour scheme, a villainous version, and something unique to the character. For All for One, they just added stripes to his suit. Careful biking, your desire to make a slop gacha game disguised as a battle royale is showing. The accessories include headgear, gloves, glasses and scarves from across the series. And some of these are from characters who aren't even in the game, like Mina's scarf, Aoyama's glasses, and Midnight's mask. So at least you can pretend they're in the game. My Hero One's Justice feels like the beginning of a good My Hero Academia game, but the individual issues compound to make the overall package a mediocre experience. The story mode is ridiculously short, and it struggles to capture the feeling of the series. The retelling of the story won't do anything for new or existing fans, since it consists of static images and the occasional cutscene that doesn't come anywhere close to the anime. They tried to pad for time by making you play through the same story as the villains, but it's essentially just the same fights as the hero mode, but now the matchup is reversed. It just feels like it's there to waste your time. The gameplay gets repetitive after a few fights, and the other game modes are super basic, with them just being, do this fight, but your enemy takes 17% less damage, among other random modifiers added to make it more challenging. And the minuscule roster does the game a disservice, since My Hero Academia has a cast of characters that's so wide and varied. I think the game's fine, but it just didn't have enough time in the oven. I think they definitely should have waited for more material to adapt from the anime, but this is a wider problem in general. There are too many games that are made after one season of anime to capitalise on the hype. 5 out of 10, if you haven't played One's Justice, trust me, you aren't missing out on anything.